Smash the like button. Hello, I'm Pittsburgh Pat, and I'm here with my friend Robin Levin. How are you today, Robin?
I'm fine, yeah.
Well, it's good to see you. It's good to meet you finally in person. Robin and I have known each other for quite some time via the internet, but we finally get a chance to speak and see each other. This is wonderful. So before we start, I just want everybody to press like for us so that more people will be able to see this video and benefit from it and keep our channel alive. Appreciate that. So Robin and I met because you have a Facebook group, and it's about ancient Roman history. Is that right?
That's right.
And you've actually written a few books. In fact, I have an autographed copy. Everybody out there can be envious of my autographed copy of the Death of Carthage. Carthage.
You're not the first one to make that mistake.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny because whenever I read Roman history, it's so full of carnage that it's hard not to think of it. But first, we're going to get to know Robin a little bit. So we're going to ask her a couple of like game show like questions for fun. So are you ready for the lightning round, Robin?
Sure.
What's the last song that you listened to?
Well, that was on the internet, and I was listening to The Sound of Silence, and I love The Sound of Silence.
Simon & Garfunkel, absolutely. If you saw two articles in the same magazine, one was on astrology and one was on astronomy, which one would you read first?
Well, I reject astrology. I think it's a bunk. So I would read the astronomy.
I'm sure the ancient Romans didn't think it was bunk, though.
No, they didn't think it was bunk. They took it very seriously.
They sure did.
Sacred chickens and everything, they
and the calendar, and the determining when the month was going to begin.
Yeah.
I thought that was very fascinating, the way that the Romans told time. What do you have a secret superpower that nobody knows about? Like if somebody were to meet you on the street and you were, I don't know, an excellent card player or a magician or something, is there anything that people don't know about you would surprise them?
Probably beat almost anybody from the street at Scrabble.
Scrabble, very cool. I love Scrabble. So we'll have to play sometime, maybe online. So if you could travel through time, this is probably an obvious question. When would you go and where?
Well, I would really like to go to like 3rd century Rome during the Punic Wars and just really see how things were. But of course, you'd be at big risk in terms of diseases and getting taken as a slave or that sort of thing. So I'd have to have some protections.
I said that to my friend the other day. We were doing an interview, and I said, that's the reason that people probably don't travel through time, is because the diseases, the vaccinations, it's probably too intense, to try to all the things that you'd be exposed to. But there is a passage in Livy, which is kind of weird, that I read. It's after Trasimene, and there's I talk about all the portents, right? Among the portents, there's like a baby that cries victory, and there's a cow that
triumphant.
Okay, and then there's a cow that goes to the 3rd floor and jumps off a building, but one of the portents was that men in silver raiment were seen at a distance, but would retreat when approached. And I always thought that was interesting, like that, who knows, maybe that was time travelers, like going back and checking things out. But, the Romans saw a lot of portents, and even Livy like prefaces that with, in times of great peril, crisis, men's minds turn towards these kinds of things.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Cannae, and that's how we're going to pronounce it for this, because your Latin is probably much better than I. So I will take you at your word with that. Cannae is the pronunciation. So we're going to use that. Because I've heard Cannae, Cannae, Canui.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So yeah, so are you do you prefer Livy or Polybius, or are you sort of a proponent of both of those?
I'm a proponent of both.
Mhm.
It was Livy that reading Livy that got me into this whole business. I found his account of the Second Punic War absolutely fascinating.
As did I. As did I. Yeah,
Yeah,
and certainly in your book, you definitely, you know, Livy, I'm sure, inspired some of this. But like, what I love is that you write through it. It's just so. To me, it's like reading Livy. Like I really do. I think Livy is the more entertaining of the two ancient authors, but
yeah,
Polybius is closer to the source. And it's
yes.
possible that he may have interviewed survivors of the war.
Yeah, I believe he did. I think he was able to interview Gaius Laelius, who long outlived Scipio. I don't think he ever, he was very young when Scipio died. So, but Laelius is probably the source of much of uh, his material.
Yeah, I find that he figures prominently in the accounts, and almost ends up being Scipio. We're talking about Cornelius Scipio, Africa, who is later known as Africanus.
Right.
Um, and he seems to be like Scipio's right hand man at a couple of these events. It's
Yes.
almost like when you read Caesar and you hear about Labienus, it's
Yeah.
it's almost like that kind of pairing, you know.
Right.
Me, in my layman's, reading of these events. But
Mm-hmm.
so so was Scipio at Cannae?
Yes, he was. He was one of about 38 military tribunes, and probably the youngest. He was 19 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And and he was, as an equus, he was on horse. He was with Paulus, I believe, on the right wing among the Roman cavalry. Uh,
Gotcha.
Varro led the Latin and the Italian cavalry on
The
the left.
allies, the
Allies,
yeah,
yes.
sure, on the left, right.
Yeah,
So this battle is famous because Hannibal. This is Hannibal's great tactical victory, right? So
right,
he has
exactly.
and this is studied throughout military history because of the classic double envelopment. So
Yeah,
when you're talking about the wings of the Roman army, obviously these two armies can be facing each other. So the Carthaginian attack comes on the left. So that would have been on Scipio's cavalry wing, that the one that he was involved in, but
yeah,
it was led by Aemilius Paulus, right?
right. It was the Numidians attacked Varro while the Hispanic horse were engaged with um, Paulus' wing.
So the Spanish cavalry, more of the heavy cavalry or heavier cavalry, I guess.
Right, right. Numidians rode bareback. They rode swift but small ponies, and
And they threw things like they were like throwing
yeah, they were
javelins,
horseback.
darts, that kind of thing.
They would go back and forth and just kind of harass the uh, the Roman cavalry.
So do you want to set up the battle for us, like the battle lines, or do you want to like talk about
Well,
like the arrangement on the field?
okay. As far as I recall, uh, Hannibal set up his troops. He had his Hispanics and Gallic troops in the middle, and
Infantry.
in the center, in the van, and they were in a crescent form. Okay. Now on the
So a crescent form, but like the point of the top of the crescent being towards the Romans, right?
right, exactly. And on the left and the right, he had African on the flanks. He had his African mercenaries
Mm-hmm.
and Hispanics. Well, no, the Hispanics were in the middle, but the African mercenaries, the Numidians, etc., were on the flanks. And then beyond that, he had um, his cavalry were divided into two. One was led by Hasdrubal, and the other one was led by Maharbal. And they were, the ones responsible for, completing the double envelopment. They kind of went around, outflanked the Romans and eventually trapped the entire Roman cavalry. Now the Romans, the battle was this to go to battle that day was decided by Varro, because Varro was in charge for that day, because the Romans alternated authority.
Okay.
And
we should say that this was like the largest army that the Romans had fielded to this date. Is that correct?
Exactly. It was around 80,000.
So normally a Roman army would be about 40,000. It would be.
Well, see, the Roman legion was about 5,000, usually less because it's, had some attrition here and there.
Right.
And the Romans normally fielded about 8 or 10 legions in the field, but with the
and then they would have allied legions that would be
right with each legion there would be an auxiliary Latin or other Italian legion.
Gotcha.
Anyway, but they had assembled some 80,000 men for this, and Varro arranged them according to first the skirmishers, which were called velites, and they did some light skirmishing, and then the maniples consisted of hastati, which hastati literally means spear, hasta means spear, and then principes, which were older and more experienced legions, and behind them the triarii. Now, what Varro did was he kind of compacted the legions to kind of form a spear to try to penetrate the Gallic and Hispanian center. So
when the Romans attacked up the middle,
right,
you were saying.
Okay, the idea was to penetrate the center, and the crescent, kind of dissolved, and then eventually became a convex. And
so it started out facing the Romans up here, and then as the Romans attacked, it kind of caved inward.
Right, and Hannibal's strategy was to retreat very, very slowly, fight the Romans off and retreat slowly. And basically, he's sacrificing these Gallic and Hispanian forces, but he's having them, retreat very, very slowly, so that it gives him time for the Punic and Numidian, the Hispanian and Numidian cavalry to defeat or to rout the Roman cavalry, and then
because I think he was outnumbered in infantry nearly 2 to 1, not quite 2 to 1, but it was pretty significant. But he actually Hannibal actually had more cavalry and better quality cavalry than the Roman army did. Is that correct?
That's true.
So he was playing to his strength.
He was playing to his strength, and eventually the two branches of Hannibal's Carthaginian cavalry would go around and outflank the Romans. So what basically happens was that Hannibal prepared a trap for the Romans, got them all surrounded by both cavalry and his African troops, and then started to compress them so that they couldn't move. They couldn't. There was not room to wield their shields, their spears and swords, and then it was like shooting fish in a barrel, and it was a slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if
Yeah.
you
Oh,
if
go
you ever
ahead.
if you ever want to get a real notion of what happened, I suggest reading this book.
Darkness over Cannae.
Cannae. It's by
Author.
Jenny Dolphin. I think she's Dutch, and
Wonderful.
it's illustrated. It's got brilliant illustrations here, and her research is superb.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it is fiction, but they say that the historian tells you what happened. The writer of historical fiction tells you how it felt, and she
Mm-hmm.
does a tremendous job in telling, relating the events of the day and telling from various points of view how it felt. So, if you really want to understand Cannae on a gut level, I
Mm-hmm.
recommend this book.
I'm going to put that in the description box below, and we're going to put a link there to your books as well as we'll identify your Roman history Facebook group as well. I was fascinated by that as well. When I read Livy, I ended up looking through some other books about the Republic, and I found Lazenby's Hannibal's War, which I found like really
Right.
really good. I know you have this
I
because
have that, yeah.
it's an amazing book, but it, like you said, it's very scholarly, and Lazenby is very careful to follow the source material very closely.
Yeah.
But then I found this book by Gregory Daly. This is called The Experience of Battle at Cannae, and
Yeah.
this
I've read
you have
that
this
too.
one as well. So that one kind of gave me more of a hands-on kind of feel of what it might
Yeah.
have been like to be in that crush, of infantry. And actually, I saw an interesting dramatization in the Game of Thrones. There's an episode where, if you'll excuse the name, the episode is actually named "The Battle of the Bastards." There's two illegitimate sons that are fighting each other, and they do dramatize a scene that later I heard the creators said was modeled after Cannae. And there's just this crunch, and they're all standing there with their swords and their shields, and they're so packed together that they can't wield their weapons. And it really is a visceral demonstration of what may have happened at that moment.
Well, her descriptions are, graphic, and that really give you a sense of what it must have been like for, both the victims and the victors.
Well, it's been horrific on both sides. I mean, it's just.
Oh, yeah. She's got one guy she calls Bomilcar, ending up, he's participating in all the slaughter, and he ends up vomiting.
Yeah. I'm sure from just sheer exertion and exhaustion at some point, maybe, there's talk in some descriptions that, some people did escape. Some Romans did escape with their lives and then reassembled later. And there's a scene where that's attributed to Scipio before he's Africanus, Cornelius Scipio, and he tries to rally those who have survived,
Yeah.
Yeah, and relieve them of their despair. But at some point, I guess, darkness falls on battlefields in ancient times, and things end because of darkness. And this one may have ended because of darkness, or may just have ended because everyone was so tired, of the killing had gone on for so long. So,
well, in Livy, there's the scene of the next morning, where it's absolutely heartbreaking, horrendous description by Livy. Some people still alive. They beg the Carthaginians come, and they take the rings from all the well-born dead Romans. These gold signet rings that the patricians and the equites wear, and they gather them up, and 2,000 of them. And I have a scene in my book, In the Wake of Hannibal, where my character Gisco is collecting these rings, you know, because Hannibal has sent his forces out to collect them among, 55,000 Roman dead, and they collect about 200. And in this scene, he encounters a Roman who's still alive, and the Roman beckons him and kind of signals that he wants him to put him out of his misery, and Gisco does that, and he takes the man's ring, and he gets out a bronze coin and puts it in his mouth, because he knows the belief that you got to pay Charon, the the ferryman of Styx, to get into Hades. So he says, well, and he takes the man's Pugio, and he says, well, fair trade.
So there is some honor, or at least there's an honoring of other society's beliefs. In fact, I think there's instances where the Romans adopt the deities of other nations, and in fact,
the Sibylline books revealed that the war would be won if the Romans imported the mother goddess Cybele from she was somewhere in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So they were supposed to send the most virtuous Roman to go and bring the goddess. And so they sent a fellow named Publius Cornelius Scipio, who was a cousin of Africanus. I think he may have been the son of Cneius Scipio. So, and he went to, I think it was Cyrene, and persuaded them to let him take the goddess, and he brought it back to Rome, and they set up a shrine for the goddess.
Do you know about what year that is? Or do you know like when during the war it is?
It was early during the war.
It was early during the war. Okay.
Yeah, gotcha. It may have been shortly after Cannae.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but
Cannae is only 2 years after the war starts, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And what we were saying before about this really large army, and you were talking about alternating days, there were 2 consuls that were in command, right, and yeah, they alternated overall authority each day. So Paulus and Varro.
Right.
But also, Varro gets a lot of, people talk about Varro because they say he was, hot-tempered, and the way he arranged the troops was, unconventional, and the striking up the middle was a dullard's like strategy and all this sort of thing. But, so he kind of gets a bad rap, but he goes back to Rome. He survives the battle.
Right.
And he's not, it doesn't seem in later accounts that he's completely disrespected. He's not defrocked of his office or anything.
No, in fact, he's assigned to eventually assigned to lead legions in the north to, defend.
Deal with the Gauls, right?
Yeah, and see, I think he's sort of a victim of the Peter principle. Got promoted well beyond his level of competence. He was Fabius was running things after Cannae, basically.
Fabius Maximus.
Fabius Maximus.
They actually called the delayer.
Right.
Right. Because of his grand strategy, which was, this guy Hannibal's dangerous. Let's just keep him like at bay and not let any more catastrophes happen. Because the Romans had a run of 3 battles that they lost.
Yeah.
Pretty much under very similar like circumstances, tactically,
Right. See, Fabius kind of thought outside the box. And if he had been allowed to have his way, I think Hannibal would have petered out in a year or 2, because the difficulties maintaining an army of 40,000 when your enemy won't fight you.
Sure, just keep them fed.
yeah, and deprives you of foraging and sustenance, etc. I mean, yeah, and also with several of the Magna Graecia cities in the south,
Mm-hmm.
Tarentum eventually, Metapontum, Locri. Um, um,
Those are all coastal cities through which Hannibal could conceivably have been supplied at some point as well.
yeah, um, when he took over Tarentum, uh, the Roman, I guess, I don't know if it was a praetor or whatever. He he retreated to the citadel and was able to defend it throughout the until Fabius took it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so many amazing incidents in this war that there's so many just back and forth turning point, possible turning points. Cannae is always the one that everybody points out. Well, one last thing I wanted to say about Varro and his tactics of kind of attacking the center. That's kind of what happened. So at Trebia, this is Hannibal laid a trap at Trebia as well, and the Roman army actually part of it punched through his lines and survived. So like by attacking straight through the middle, and at Trasimene there was a kind of an ambush on the flank, and the van actually of the Roman army does break through and gets out. Although there's a great loss of life in the of all of the troops. There was a long line. It was on a coastal road. It was strung out, and there were hills on one side and the sea on the other. I'm sorry, the lake on the other, and so the back 2/3 of the army get mauled, but the front gets out. So there's kind of
they were captured the next day. They took refuge in a Etruscan village, and then Maharbal, who I mentioned earlier, the cavalry chief, surrounded the village with his men and offered them their, to be able to leave with a single garment if they surrendered their arms. But when they surrendered their arms, they were, taken to Hannibal, who refused to release them. Now, eventually he released the Latins, the allies, but he sold the Romans into slavery.
Sure.
And if you read my book, my character Aeneas was in that, and he was sold into slavery and ended up in Achaia, Greece.
Yeah, the Hannibal's playing again. He's playing a diplomatic game here as well. He wants the Latin states to rebel against Rome. He knows that's what he needs.
He wants them to go and persuade their fellows to join him.
So he's going to treat those prisoners with respect and dignity so that they can spread the word that Hannibal's not this monster who's come to kill them all. He just wants to kill Romans.
Yeah. What he says is, I have not come to place a yoke over Italy. I've come to free Italy from the Romans.
Sure. Well,
he was not stupid,
What's that?
I said Hannibal was not stupid.
Hannibal was very smart, very intelligent. He did what he had to do. There's a lot of people who say, well, he lost most of his army by crossing the Alps. And I always say, well, he must have done it because he had to, right? So,
well, my theory, though, is that he would have done better to let the Romans come to him. And the Romans under Africanus' father and uncle, both, they led legions. The uncle eventually went to Spain, but by then Hannibal had left, and he'd left his brother Hasdrubal in charge of Spain. And if he had stayed in Spain, he would have had 100,000 men at his command and all the resources of southern Spain at his disposal.
Yep.
And he would have absolutely demolished any legions that the Romans sent. And then once he had done that and really bloodied the Romans' noses, he could have built a fleet and fought the Romans at sea and invaded from the south. Formed an alliance with one of the Magna Graecia cities and he could have taken over Corsica and Sardinia and maybe Sicily. And I think the war would have gone a lot better for him if he had done that.
No, it sounds definitely, in retrospect, definitely sounds like that would have been a better way to go. But there's, other people in the sources that accuse Hannibal of not being a great strategist, being a great tactician, but not being a great strategist.
Yeah.
After the Battle of Cannae,
the problem with Hannibal. He was a great tactician, but Fabius was a great strategist, but not a great tactician. Hannibal was a great tactician, but not a great strategist. The overall thing, he got it wrong.
Well, is it Maribal who says after Cannae says to Hannibal, you know how to win a victory, but don't know how to use it.
Exactly.
Is that Maribal? And Hasdrubal, now there's a couple Hasdrubals. This gets a little confusing. So there's the brother in Spain who's
fighting, is Hasdrubal,
is fighting the Scipios in Spain, the uncle and Scipio Africanus' father. But then there's the Hasdrubal who's the cavalry commander on the flank who really kind of wins the battle. I mean, yes, the delaying action of the infantry is in there, but if it weren't for the initiative of Hasdrubal to make the Roman cavalry flee, and then instead of pursuing them, turning and helping to crush the allied cavalry, because the Numidian cavalry is light cavalry, he comes upon them from the rear and then scatters them. And then the mass of Roman infantry is naked, has no cavalry screen, and he is able to help to.
So that was the whole plan. I think that Hannibal conceived.
Yeah.
And he had to coordinate it with both Maharbal and Hasdrubal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So do we know that Hasdrubal? Do we know if he's related to Hannibal at all, or is that just a common Punic name?
It's a very common Punic name in Darkness over Cannae. She refers to him as Hasdrubal the Ugly. And not because he was ugly, because to contrast him with Hasdrubal the Fair, who was Hannibal's brother-in-law. Well, we could discuss my books.
Sure, let's.
Okay, this first one, The Death of Carthage,
I have and read, and I actually have your signature.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. And that's when we met. We met in 2017, I think we met, and online.
And there is in the Wake of Hannibal. Now, the Death of Carthage is told from the Roman point of view. This is told from the Carthaginian point of view.
Excellent.
And
so, are you still using Livy for that, or are you using other? I know there are some sources that say. Oh gosh, I know the names, but there's two non-existing works apparently that are referred to by other Roman historians.
Yeah. Well, there's Fabius Pictor. I wish I had him.
Yeah.
I wish.
That's what I was going to say. So you talked about Livy's account after the battle, and unfortunately, Polybius's book after the battle is lost. So we have the Battle of Cannae, but then it stops, and there's a lacunae until I forget, but it's later on in 2016. It may even be 2015. I'm sorry, 216, 215 BC.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of Polybius has been lost.
Yeah. But Fabius Pictor would be wonderful to read. Yeah. There's only fragments of that, right?
And I would love to have Scipio's memoirs.
Oh, gosh.
Too. And I would love to have Plutarch's lives of Scipio. Both Scipio Major and Minor, he wrote lives, and they've been lost. And then if you're interested in the Third Punic War, where the Romans destroy Carthage, I have a book called The Last Carthaginian.
Carta de Lengo Est, right?
Yeah, and the story is told by two children,
Oh,
Carthaginian children who survive and are sold into slavery. And then for lesser works, if you're interested in Fabius, I have Maximus, warts and all.
you actually gave me a copy of that. I have that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the only other work, Roman work I have is Sempronia, the sister of the Gracchi, and it tells the story of the Gracchi, but that's, another close to century after, 80 years after.
So are all of these available on Amazon?
Yeah, they're all available on Amazon.
Excellent.
Did you get around to reading the work in progress I sent you about Scipio?
I didn't read the entire 90 pages you sent me, but I do have some comments on what I've read so far. So
Okay.
I'll give those to you, but not in this format. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading more. I really enjoyed it. What I've read so far. That's the thing. Robin is a wonderful visual writer. It's very, I find that Robin's work is very easy for me to see. Her descriptions are very clear, and her attention to detail, to historical detail, is impeccable. So if you were to follow along with Livy and Levin, Livy, there's a little bit of play on words there. You may be able to follow. You may be able to see some, that you're very faithful to the source material, which I really like, because it's fun as an author to take our flights of fancy, but it's also nice when the story is interesting enough to tell itself that it doesn't need a ton of embellishment. It just needs to be told in a straightforward, way. Yeah.
Exactly. This story told itself.
Yeah. Well, they're great. It's great. You can't make this stuff up. Some of the stuff is just so amazing. You just can't top it if you tried. So, but yeah, that's great. So I'm gonna link all those works in the description, and make sure that a lot of people get to know and read your material. So
okay, well, that'd be great.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview today. This was wonderful, and of course we can talk about all sorts of Roman history, but Cannae is always like a focal point, and the anniversary just passed. It was August, right?
Yep.
16 BC.
Yeah.
They're pretty sure that date. Now, to my knowledge, they don't really even know what side of the river it was fought on. Like, there's a lot of discrepancy as to which way the Romans were facing, and there's descriptions of the river being on one side, but nobody, in one description,
the Alphetus may have changed course.
Exactly. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I theorized that it was held on the north side, if the river was going east-west.
Gotcha.
But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's still, and as far as I know, there's no archaeological evidence. So none of those signet rings have been found.
Well, they took the signet rings to Carthage, and Hannibal's other brother, Mago, poured them out on the Carthaginian Senate just to impress, the Carthaginians with the victory.
I imagine him doing it very slowly, so that it took a long time. They just
had it in an urn. Yeah.
A constant stream of, and then the noise of them hitting the marble floor. I have this scene in my mind that of that happening. I don't know that. Maybe I read in one of your books.
They were going to send supplies to Hannibal that he desperately needed. But Hannibal's brother had lost this big battle of Tortosa in Spain. And so getting news of that, they decided to send almost all of the reinforcements to Spain under Mago, brother of Hannibal, and Hasdrubal, son of Gisco. And Hannibal received almost nothing. And what he did receive was, I think, 20 elephants and 4,000 Numidian mercenaries. And after that, Hannibal received zilch because the Romans really got their act together and defended the coastline. So from 215 BC, when Hannibal received that onward to 204 BC or 3 BC, when he goes back to Africa, he received basically nothing from Carthage.
Right. Yeah. And there's an attempt at a link up, actually, that's defeated.
Right. The Battle of the Mataras.
That's right.
Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal was, his forces were annihilated. And that's an interesting story in itself. But
yeah, Claudius Nero does he actually fools Hannibal into thinking he's still in position in front of him, and takes 2/3 of his army and links up with another Roman army and is able to participate in that battle.
Marcus Livius Salinator, the other consul, and he persuades Salinator that they need to attack Hasdrubal right away. And Hasdrubal, well, I'm afraid Hasdrubal just didn't have Hannibal's smarts or abilities, and he gets, a lot of his Celtic allies got drunk, and they led him in the wrong place, and the Mataras River was in flood, so he couldn't get across. And so Livius and Nero bring him to battle, and they totally annihilate his forces. And then Nero cuts off Hasdrubal's head. He's already dead, and delivers it to Hannibal's camp down in, I believe it was Apulia. When Hannibal sees it, he says, well, now we know the fate of Carthage.
Yeah, that was a dramatic moment. I mean, that's really, if you want, there's so many obvious, possible turning points, but that's serious. That's a serious turning point right there.
Right. Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Hannibal with Victor Mature? But the most dramatic scene was where Hannibal discovers, sees his brothers. Then I saw that movie. I was about 10 or 11, and it was traumatic.
Oh no. Yeah, I guess cutting off your brother's head and presenting it to, being presented with it would definitely be a moment in one's life. But even for a battle-hardened warrior like Hannibal,
yes.
I would definitely take the fight out of you for a minute. We covered this in detail, more detail than I expected, and I loved it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So we'll say goodbye for now. And if you like this video, put it in the comments below. Let us know what we did right and what you'd like to hear about next time. And have a great day, and see if you can help somebody today without getting caught.
Okay. Nice talking with you, Pittsburgh Pat. And we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Robin.